We're going to look at the Villanelle now, which is another fixed form of poetry popularized by the French. The Villanelle is a very interesting poem because it requires some repetition of lines and a very strict stanza format, and also a very strict rhyme scheme and line lengths. So we're looking at Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." All right, here are some characteristics of the Villanelle, just to give you an overview. Villanelles usually deal with a weighty, serious subject. You'll see that Dylan Thomas's poem does, in fact, do that. He's talking about the death of his father in this one. That's pretty weighty. Villanelles have 6 stanzas. The first 5 stanzas are tercettes. Now, tercette means, of course, that they are 3-line stanzas. The last stanza is a quatrain, which is a 4-line stanza. The tercettes follow an A-B-A rhyme scheme. Every single one of them you'll see as we go through. The quatrain follows an A-B-A-A rhyme scheme. The first line appears 4 times in the poem, and the third line appears 4 times in the poem, interspersed throughout, and it's also written in iambic pentameter. You'll see again, so iambic, da-da, pentameter, 5 feet. Very specific, very intentional manipulation of the form to showcase its message. Let's take a look at the first tercette. Here it is. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at the close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Okay, so the first thing I want you to look at here is lines 1 and 3 are going to alternately repeat at the ends of each subsequent stanza. So you're going to see "Do not go gentle into that good night" and "Rage, rage against the dying of the light." You're going to see them repeated throughout the poem. The second thing is I want you to think about the imagery implied in "that good night." Do not go gentle into that good night. What kind of night is he talking about here? I've already hinted to you that Thomas is dealing with the death of his father in this Villanelle, so that good night is a euphemism for death itself. Let's take a look at the second tercette. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Couple of striking images here. First of all, look at the, before we get to image, look at the fact that there is no punctuation at the end of line 2, which indicates that there's no pause. And I read it that way, but let me do it again. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. And this is true for reading poetry in general. If you see punctuation at the end of a line, you're going to pause. If you don't, you're going to barrel straight on through to the very next line and just keep reading. Okay, second point here under notes is, what does the phrase "forked no lightning" mean? Let's look at it in the context of the whole line. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. It's an interesting image. Who do you know that could possibly fork lightning from a simple word? You could think maybe God could. That would be a being, God, with a tremendous amount of influence. Or occasionally you may have heard of so-and-so being able to call lightning down from heaven or whatever. It conveys the same idea here, which is to say influence. Because their words had forked no lightning, or in other words, because they had no influence, they do not go gentle into that good night. In other words, they resist death because they feel as though their lives have not been influential enough, or they haven't done enough. As opposed to someone who can can die knowing that he or she has lived a really full life. You can go gentle, that is, you can die peaceably. But this is a different image here. These are men who have not had enough influence, they think. The third tercet. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their final deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So now, look at this image here. What do you think that the poet means by good men? Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their final deeds might have danced in a green bay. Think about that. Good men. These are people who have a sense of their own morality and who believe that they've done deeds, good deeds, their final deeds, their frail, I'm sorry, I've been misreading that. I just realized it says their frail deeds. They have actually, they see that they've done some good, but in the end that maybe it wasn't really worth as much as they thought it was. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. In other words, they want to stick around and do more. Okay? Why did Thomas use frail to define deeds? Well, I think probably when you are dying, everything you've done seems just a little bit unimportant. Even your hugest accomplishments in your whole life, on your deathbed, they just don't carry the weight that they did when you were alive and well, do they? And that's more than likely one of the best reasons why that is so. Okay, also, I would like you to note the repetition of line 3 at the end of this tercet, and there it is. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The fourth tercet. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learn too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Now we have a different kind of man here, different group of people. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. Think about that. Obviously, we can't literally catch the sun, but these are people who have lived wildly. They've grasped every single opportunity they had to have fun or to enjoy life or to take a daring chance. You know people like this, and maybe you're a person like that yourself. You've decided to leave no stone unturned when it comes to taking a challenge in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Thomas says, here's what happens. You may have caught and sang the sun in flight and learn too late they grieved it on its way. In other words, life passed people by, these men, these wild men, and they didn't realize that, oh my gosh, I was so busy having fun and taking chances that now my life is over. They learn too late that it's over. These men do not go gentle into that good night. All right, here's our fifth tercet. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Here is a different group of men here. Grave men, serious men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage against the dying of the light. Of course, so in other words, they can realize at the very end of their lives that even though maybe they are no longer seeing literally with their eyes, it says they could blaze like meteors, that all of a sudden they have an epiphany or they have a moment where they can see clearly. And maybe it's something like what their lives could be like, or something like that. But at any rate, it makes them rage against the dying of the light. Notice again the line 3's repetition at the end of this tercet. The previous one had line 1's repetition. All right, here is the concluding quatrain. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. It's a very powerful conclusion to this poem in this concluding quatrain here. You'll notice that the last two lines are line 1 and line 3 respectively. And let's look at some individual images here. First of all, look at the sudden shift to the second person. You're going to notice that he says, you. Why did the poet do this? We haven't seen you throughout the entire poem here. And you, my father, there on that sad height. Think about it. Now he's addressing his father directly. What do you think that sad height means? Well, perhaps his father is in a hospital bed. You know how they are. They're kind of tall, and there's bars around them to keep you from falling out, and you're kind of trapped there. Sometimes, depending on how much you thrash, you're strapped in, whatever. So you, my father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. What is he saying here? Thomas asks his father to curse, bless me. Why would he ask him to do that? It could be that he's asking his father to do anything, any show of strength, any show of a will to live. Even a man who is cursing on his deathbed sometimes is showing the will to live. Curse, at least curse, or bless me now with your fierce tears. In other words, give me some benevolent blessing before you go. Do not go gentle into that good night. In other words, don't just lay down and take death. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I hope that this poem makes some sense to you now. If you had your book out, you can see the poem in its entirety. We just jumped ahead here and took it one stanza at a time. But it's a very, very strong, intense poem about fighting death and about working hard to do anything but just lay down and take it. And I want to tell you that it is precisely the repetition of these lines, do not go gentle into that good night, rage, rage against the dying of the light. It is the repetition of these two lines throughout the poem that helps sharpen that message. And the rhyme scheme, the ABA, 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 ABAA, that repetition of sound is like a hammer on a nail, and it just bang, bang, bang all the way through the poem. You can feel Thomas's desperation as he wrestles with his father's death and his own mortality, really, because there is probably a part of him in every single group of men that he discusses here. So I hope you've enjoyed this poem, which, although it's a very serious subject, it is probably one of the best villanelles ever written.